How was the bash? Those breakfast burritos were lifesavers this morning. Hopefully you all got coffee. So we only have one session this morning. It's a panel before we break for lunch. But quick bit of housekeeping. We're running a little bit behind schedule, so we're going to eat into a little bit of lunchtime. We'll go to 11:45 this morning.
That was fun.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
But I see some of you spread out way out wide. This is going to be a pretty active, fun session. So if you could just come over into these two sections primarily, I think it'll all work out a lot better if you can slide over. Cool, thanks. Cool. As you guys kind of move over, we can once you slide over, we can get started. Don't be shy.
Thanks. The only red shirt.
It's all good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and there's some room up front if anyone wants to come up in the front row. The brave souls.
Brave souls.
All right. Awesome. Well, I'll let these guys introduce themselves, but let's take it away. Thanks, guys.
Great. Hi, I'm Kenny White. I'm going to be the moderator for today. I'm one of the co-founders of Funworks. And what we're going to be talking about today, why fun is good for business. And I think one of the things that all of us really believe up here is that fun can actually act as an economic multiplier for your business. And so what we wanted to do is actually get a wide array of people with different perspectives on how they've actually taken fun and then turned it into an economic multiplier. So let me introduce you to some of your panel. First, at the very end, we've got Paul Charney, and he's actually a comedian who took fun and turned a business out of it. So he's currently the founder and creative director at Funworks. Next, we have Mark Halverson, who was originally a software developer and took fun and created a whole career out of it. So now he's from Atlassian, is the chief Imagineer over at Atlassian. And last, we wanted to give you guys an academic look at fun and how it can affect people. And so
Because it's a panel.
Because it's a panel, we need different perspectives. And so we have a researcher who actually took fun and wrote a white paper about it. Welcome Garrett Yeager. And he is the researcher at the Center for Childhood Creativity. And so rather than just kind of talking about fun, I think one of the things we wanted to do is actually show you how fun can actually work as a multiplier. And so we're going to have Garrett lead you guys through a quick exercise. So Garrett, if you want to take it away.
All right, great. So what we're going to do, I want you to pair up really quick, okay? Get two of you to get together. We're going to do two people in groups. And pull out. Introduce yourselves, get to know each other. This is going to be fun. It's not
Keep
stiff.
the energy up, maybe just stand up.
Yeah, cool.
Feel free to stand up.
While you're getting up, standing, shaking, and all about, get out a
It'll
notepad
shake the
or
hangover
a
off.
note keeper on your iPhone, your phone, or whatever, because I'm going to ask you to do some brainstorming really quick.
Yeah, everyone's awake.
30 seconds. Okay, now that you guys are really, really good friends,
Okay.
we're gonna move into the actual fun part.
That sounded fun, but
All right, so both of you pull out your phone or a notepad. We're gonna take some notes really quick because I'm gonna ask you two to work together on a problem that you have in the workplace. Okay, so while you're working together, generate these problems, as many problems as you can think of. Don't worry about coming up with the solutions quite yet. The research actually on fun, well actually on creativity, is that you want to suspend judgment as long as you can, because if you're judging and evaluating while you're creating, you tend to snap into making sure you meet the expectations of those people, which is not creative. So come up with those ideas. We're going to take 3 minutes to come up with as many problems as you can.
1 minute.
1 minute.
1 minute.
1 minute? 1 minute. We're doing brief. We're going to get 3 minutes. 1 minute to come up with as many problems as you can, and keep track of those, please.
Anything
Any
at the
problem
workplace.
in the workplace.
At work.
We're
doing
3 minutes, and then 1 minute to choose the...
Oh, 1 minute, and then 3 minutes is going to be the...
And then 3 minutes again.
yeah.
Oh, so you'll keep track down there? Okay.
Yeah. Actually, you can go to the next slide.
Oh, let's just count down.
Okay.
I like that there were a couple people that just bailed once there was like, nope, interactivity, I'm out. I was looking for like a really mellow.
Boom, 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 boom. Same problems? You guys are having the same problems? Communication? Wait, what were you talking about?
Oh, it's up there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
6, 5.
It's everywhere, Paul.
4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy problem solving. Okay, so now you have a bunch of different problems. Now I would like it if two of you together could decide on one problem that you think is the most pressing, something that you need to get onto and figure out. So between the two of you, figure out one. I'll give you 30 seconds to figure that out. This is what we were going to do the 1 minute, but we're cool. More time for us to talk, right?
It's amazing.
Do you guys have overlapping problems? Yeah? You got a good one? Really pressing? All right, well, we're going to try.
Getting in the way of progress. That's the big problem.
Oh, speed bumps? People speed bumps? All right.
Okay.
Okay. Does everybody have a big problem? Huge problem?
Who's got a problem?
Who's got a problem in here?
Who's got problems? All right.
Okay. Once again, now we're going to come up with some solutions to that problem. Okay? So together, come up, same, just like you did before when you were coming up with a problem. Now work together, come up with as many solutions to that problem as you can. We're going to give you 3 minutes to do it, and then we're going to check back in afterwards, okay? So 3 minutes, as many solutions as you can. And go.
All right. Should we go out?
Big problems? What's that?
Our problems are different because we're a newer team.
Oh, yeah.
So, and it's a focus change for our organization also. Project management.
So is that part of the transition is a problem?
Got your problem?
Yes. 'cause
Easing
we're in
that transition?
We're in that storming,
All right.
warming part right now.
Yeah. So you're doing what we're
Customer
talking about
communication.
is you're trying to find out how to make that transition better. So maybe that could be your problem that you
Try and
come up with a bunch of
as
different
many,
solutions.
Like,
Yeah.
don't judge any of your answers.
Cool.
All right.
You fellas find a big problem?
We just don't have it. Too much work to
Yeah. So what's your solution for that?
work everybody about 80 to 100 hours a week.
So you have like a pause button for people or a slow-mo button? Is that something you could come up with? No? A slow-mo button, slow things down so you can get ahead of everybody?
I like it. Lots of writing. That's good.
Well, hey, that's a valid solution. You guys agree on a nice big problem?
People being overwhelmed,
Overwhelmed.
because that affects all the other problems.
Yeah, because they're cranky and burnt out. What kind of solutions are you guys coming up with?
More people,
What's that?
more people.
More
such
people.
as well, prioritization, filtering tasks,
Do you have time travel in there?
Maddie, right now.
Nice keyboard, by the way.
Oh, it's a theme from
Up?
Swiss Key.
Oh,
It's a Swiss Key keyboard. I don't remember when you chose it.
yeah.
No affiliation.
As a panelist. But if you
I don't work for them. I just I've added time travel, evaluation,
Uh-huh.
being able to evaluate what we've done rather than rushing it.
what? Really good turnout.
Huge.
It says, yeah, it's engraved into the rock.
Is it buried under any paperwork yet? Occasionally, every once in a while, you have to excavate it. Yeah.
What?
3 minutes.
Every so often.
Yeah.
And
Good
for
idea.
some,
Oh, I could use your help if
10,
you could punch your head on the
7,
slides and
6,
conjure my mind of
5,
what's going
4,
next. You know what I mean?
3, 2, 1.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Okay, now that you have all your problems solved, I want you guys, same pairs, you can stand up if you like, stand on one foot if you like. Talk about a funny movie that you saw recently and share a line, share something you thought was funny, a character that got you gut-busting, laughing, bent over, whatever. Take the next minute to talk about your favorite movie as far as funny, something funny.
I promise it's really
It doesn't matter. Just a funny movie scene, or funny TV show, anything.
Yeah.
Something that made you
Something
laugh.
that made you laugh.
I don't think this is working.
And then we're going to move to the Hokey Pokey.
Thank you. Yeah, so it doesn't give you the preview. It does? Ah, cool.
I still haven't seen anything funnier since that spy thing I shared with you.
All right,
I'll tell you what
do
wasn't
guys
funny
got
was I
here?
saw The Martian.
What kind of funny stuff are you talking about?
That was not funny.
Oh, how was that? Ridiculous? That's funny. One of my dad's go-to laughs instead of laughing is stupid. It's like a built-in laugh.
Oh, really?
Like some people chuckle, some people snort, or it's not really.
So
That's like
no music at all. Okay.
That's when you know it's funny.
I need that.
And we have the song, right? We have the song, right?
10,
Yeah, cool.
9,
8,
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah.
All right, now that you've figured out what is the funniest thing on TV and a movie that's going on, I want you to do the Hokey Pokey. So, here we go. You guys stand up. You gotta stand up for the Hokey Pokey. You gotta get up. Right foot in, right foot out. Your right foot in, and you shake it all about. You do the Hokey Pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about.
You put your left hand in,
You put your left hand out. You put your left hand in, and you shake it all about. You do the Hokey Pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about.
You put your
Right foot in, you put your right foot out. You put your right foot in and you shake it all about. You do the Hokey Pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about. Okay.
All right. It's been a while, hasn't it?
30 more minutes of Hokey Pokey. And repeat. And panel.
Okay, now, here's our little intervention. You had a little fun. Now let's look at those same problems that you tried to solve beforehand after you just had a little fun. Okay, so the same problem, come up with solutions. You get to revisit it again. See how this has changed, how you look at a problem. And this is one of the big pieces of what we're trying to give to you today is sometimes you start off with trying to solve a problem. You're looking at it in the same mindset that you built the problem. Now, we made you have fun, we had you dance. Now you're going to look at it from a different perspective. So take the next 3 minutes to come up with even better solutions to that problem.
All right.
Get weird.
Yeah, time to get weird. What kind of problems are you guys having? What kind of problems are you guys having?
Communication problems. So we both have it our company. I gotta figure out how to put show tunes into
Almost
into your
everybody I've
problem
talked to
now.
has said the same. That's the main thing. Yeah. Yeah. What kind of solutions did you come up
What was
with
the problem
before?
you guys are trying to solve?
Well, adoption of tools, of course. If everyone's
Incentivizing teams. Oh my God, that's
Yeah.
actually great. To make them like get up and have to do
cross-team activities. Cross-team presentations
Yeah.
is actually something that my team is doing in 2 weeks. Going through every team is presenting to every other team.
Okay.
Learning sessions, just looking through some of those. getting teams to communicate naturally.
Keep going.
The documentation that's available to people, again, that kind of just
All right, now give me some fun, weird ones. Like, have you guys thought about like crafting? Have you thought about creating your own language
Like,
so
yeah,
this
fine,
communication thing will be
everyone's
real
into.
easy? You have your own language? What is it called? Wait, who are you guys? Yeah, maybe there's a sign language involved in it or something. Elbow touching. Yeah. Pneumatic tubes. Oh, the old banks. Oh man.
So you incentivize teams and you're creating team building.
That would be a great like ringtone or like
that's cool.
notification.
Yeah, keep going. Keep going. You guys are killing it. Oh.
We'll see. You guys have any weird solutions here?
Are you guys running out of ideas?
Different ones than we had before.
Different, yeah.
What was your problem? Communication.
Any magic involved? No magic, no Harry Potter.
It is pretty vague.
You didn't want to shake it all about?
Yeah, well,
What's your favorite answer so far?
So project negotiation and role management is something you guys are going to be working on?
Taking them while I'm getting them drunk.
Hokey pokey management?
I got you. Alcohol and drugs. Alcohol and drugs. Got you. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you guys got here? Got anything weird?
It was the developers not
We could talk about. I could.
both QA.
All those fun movies and things.
So
we
what
talked about,
kind of
there's
solutions did you come
probably
up with
some
after
fun
you
process.
shook it all about?
Well, I mean,
But yes,
we
it
already
is.
had our list before. I know that some things
Five,
work for me, but
four,
come down
three,
to personality.
2, 1.
Steph Curry for 3.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. All right, great. So this probably happens often in the workplace, probably not as much as you'd like it to happen, but I'm going to give you the nerdy, sciencey, academic version and why the Center for Childhood Creativity puts a lot of energy and research into this. We see value in what just happened here and working together. One of the big things that was brought up was communication. So a lot of times when you're coming up with ideas, communication is a really big problem. Sometimes it's don't come up with the weird ideas. Sometimes you're sitting in a group and there's the person who usually dominates. So they're the ones who are making the decisions, coming up with ideas. Meanwhile, you're quietly sitting back, making sure you don't upset your manager or your boss or such. That doesn't help when it comes to what we're calling speed storming. But in research, we call this divergent thinking. A lot of times standardized testing in schools, convergent thinking, come up with the right answer to a solution. Very popular, it's how we determine intelligence, how we evaluate. Divergent thinking is, let's give you one problem and see how many solutions you can come up with. And there's been research on this for 60 years, well-trodden path of research. And what we find, and what I tried to suggest to you in the beginning was, come up with as many ideas as you can, because our research from ages from 6 years old up to 7 years old is that the more ideas you come up with, the more likely 1 or 2 or 4, the more likely you're going to have more original ideas. Okay, so come up with, get them out there. And here's how it usually works. And you can see this with children really easy, is you ask them to come up with something, a bunch of things that are round. Come up with round things. The child will sit there and they'll look around and they'll go light bulb, clock, chair, seat, and they name everything around them that they can see. So that's a very proximal way to come up with ideas. And then gradually, when you run out of things in your environment, you start going into events that happen today or things that happen in your experience. If you want to come up with real original solutions, you want to diverge. You want to get more distal with your ideas so that it's not just your direct experience. That's when you start getting weird. You run out of this resource of what's normal and accepted. So the more time, that's why we gave you 3 minutes, research will tell you that after 3 minutes is when a lot of the original ideation comes because you've used up all those normal resources. If you sit in a meeting and you try to brainstorm ideas, you'll spend a lot of time just going through those normal ones and doing the same thing over and again. What we did as an intervention was to have fun, to have you get up and shake it all about, was to break the norm of, and there's plenty of research on this, a lot of our problems come from a certain way of looking at things in perspective. Breaking out of that and having fun, having a good laugh about it, shaking it all about, allows you to separate yourself from the mindset that creates those problems into one that accepts and that thinks that the weird ones are actually pretty funny. which is what movies generally do, is make you laugh at something that violates your expectations. So you can use this in the workplace. We're going to open up to the panel discussion. Once again, when you're coming up with this, I want to make sure you think about this. When you're working together, 2 important things to think of. Come up with as many ideas as you can without judging. Save the judgment for later. And then if you want people to keep coming up with new ideas, don't just use their ideas. Let them be involved in the process of selecting the good idea as well. It increases the motivation for them to actually care what's going on in this process. So thanks.
Great. So now that we've heard a little bit of the research, you guys got to feel how it actually works. I wanted to turn this first question to Paul, who actually took all of these ideas around fun and how it acts as an economic multiplier and created a whole business around it. And so I guess, Paul, one of the first questions I have for you is just really, why do you think it's an economic multiplier? What have you experienced in starting your own business around it?
First of all, I started a company Kenny and I did, called Funworks, and it's basically, we describe it as a content accelerator, and I'll spell that out later. But basically what happened was that I'd been working in advertising, and at the same time I'd been working in sketch comedy and improv. And I always marveled at how within the creative process of sketch comedy and improv, how many more ideas are generated. And how many of them are good ideas? And I was always impressed with that sort of creative process versus when I worked at a traditional ad agency, which was literally the way people come up with ideas is send two people into a room and awkwardly stare at each other for days. And I was doing both. And then in the evening, I would go to these writers' rooms with all these people who are just compelled to think of ideas and are having a good time doing it. And in 2 hours, you can't even compare the output to those 2 people for 2 weeks. And that started getting my head going that okay, this is much more efficient. This is a better way to work. And I started diving in a little bit more, and I deconstructed it is because people are having a good time. They're fearless in those situations. They are not carrying the burden of all these pressures outside the walls. Even though in those situations, these writers and these comedians, they have a show in a couple of days, but they don't seem bothered by that because they know they look forward to actually coming up with ideas. The actual process itself was really fun and liberating. And to your point, there was no critic in the room. It's just they're cool with that idea sucked. Let's go on to the next one. There's sort of that comfort with each other, and the process itself sort of opened my eyes to I think this is how people could work. And so that's sort of what I started doing was sort of working with clients in a different sort of creative process of bringing them in the room with these free thinkers, these improv people and these sketch writers who are really good about turning the self-critic off. And I've noticed someone described it, it's more like tandem jumping. So that all of a sudden these people who don't have all the improv and sketch experience, that's okay, but when they're around that creativity and that fun, it opens them up. And they start sharing ideas that they had and haven't really had a forum or a comfort level to share them. And it's really that moment of oh yeah, this is like when everyone sits around and has a beer and has a good time. There's a real truth in that. And that's why I think what we've done is why we call it a content accelerator is because going through that process of fun will get you to ideas faster. I thoroughly believe that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. We actually started working with you guys. I've been the other side of those meetings where you send people off to come back with ideas, and you get good ideas out of them, but you never get the right things, or you never feel bought into it in the same way. So I'm Mark. I work at Atlassian, and I was an engineer for a long time, and recently started working in the creative department. I also have a background in sketch comedy and improv, and I hate panels because I never know what's coming out of my mouth, but I'll just warn you there. So I started noticing the negativity in the workplace, and I was sitting in a lot of meetings where people are just shooting ideas down. So ideas come out, and people are like, no, that won't work. No, that won't work. And so there's been research done that a lot of feedback is negative in meetings because negative feedback tends to make you look smarter. than positive feedback, and which is strange to me. But I was noticing in improv. The positivity of
No negativity, nothing negative.
So in improv, when I would go get with a group of improvisers, there's just this incredible sense of positivity and teamwork that happens because everyone that's there is just there to support each other and build each other up, accept ideas and build upon them. And when you do that, I was noticing that you get to these ideas that you couldn't get to if you were trying to come up with ideas on your own. So like sending two people off to a room to stare at each other, when you have a bunch of people in a room all building on each other's ideas, you end up with just like these amazing transcendent things that are totally not possible. But what you find is that through the process of coming up with all these ideas, you kind of mesh things into solutions that are actually can work. And it's fun when you do it. And if you use a process like Funworks does, you bring the stakeholders along with you, which means at the end, they're totally bought into the solution you came up with. And for us, like I work with Sam, he's in the back of the room. We make a lot of like videos and things for Atlassian, and having stakeholders bought into the idea is hugely important when you actually come up with the output, because when you're creative, you're taking risks all the time, and you're putting yourself out there, and that sets you up for failure. And what I've noticed in a lot of situations is when you put stuff out, as soon as somebody says something negative about it, if you're not bought into the idea, you step away. And so a lot of times we put these creative things out, and then the stakeholders, as soon as they hear something negative, step away from it. And like we're left standing there like, hey, it's creative. We took a risk. Some things fail. Doesn't matter, you know? But if they ride along with the process, once you put it out, they're like, this is a great idea. What are you talking about? You know, you have to, when you're going through the creative process, you have to realize that creativity is not for everybody. You're going to have people that don't like it and like it.
So, Mark, I think a follow-up question that I have, and I think a lot of people might be wondering is, fun sounds really great in the business place, but when you're at a large organization, how do you actually introduce it into your organization? How can you get your boss to be like, yeah, that's something we should invest in? And I'm kind of curious about how you did it.
Yeah, so I as I said, I was noticing all this positivity and creativity in improv that I was doing, and I started thinking like, what would it be like in this? I was sitting in meetings daydreaming. What would it be like in this meeting if everybody was supporting each other? And what would it be like if everybody in this room was accepting ideas and building upon them instead of shooting them down? So I started thinking about ways that we could build that culture and have people in the room kind of understand the basics of accepting an idea and building upon it. And so what I did was actually I started running a pilot program within the company to do improv workshops where we would invite a bunch of people together to learn just the basics of improv. And the first improv class or anything you do, it's all games. Like it's not jumping up on stage and like performing. It's like learning how to like let go of that critic in your mind and like make silly sounds and jump around and like, you know, kind of make silly shapes and do silly things. It's a lot like kind of what we just did with speedstorming, where you just let go of that critic. And so I started running this pilot program of improv workshops, and I played around with the format a little bit. I started doing it as a team building thing where I'd pull together a team of people that work together all the time and kind of teach them the basics. And then when they go back out, you know, the next time that they're kind of coming up with ideas, they have these tools where they can stand up and say, let's play a game and reset. Or, you know, just standing up in a meeting room kind of frees you a little bit. Being creative is like a full body exercise. Like it's not all up here. It's kind of like getting up, you know? And anyway, you teach these little things. And then I also did ones where we pulled people from different teams and tried to create like ambassadors for improv around the company. Cool. And we actually traveled around the world teaching this at different offices. And out of 170 people that went through the program, so about 10% of Atlassian went through this improv thing. One person said it wasn't worth his time, which is funny because that one person, that bugs me. A lot, but
I have his picture on my phone.
I know, I actually did. Anyway, but like 170 people said this was worth my time, and then I started having teams actually approach me and say, "Can you do this at my offsite just to like loosen people up and things?" And it really helps. Actually, it really has been a positive thing overall. Yeah?
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
That's great. Yeah, it does.
Kenny?
We're working on it.
All right.
Well, I was going to say, the speedstorming exercise that you just went through, and to piggyback off what Mark said, it's used within the education and within assessment. We use it. The Torrance test for creative thinking has been around for 40 years, actually 50 years, sorry, where they've been collecting data on children and longitudinal data of people as they grow older. So we have 7-year-olds who are still taking these exams. And what we found out is coming up with these ideas, weird ideas, not necessarily problem solutions at a workplace, but that it's a predictor of creative potential. What does that mean? It means that the people who do well on these divergent thinking exercises, coming up with lots of original ideas, lots of ideas, that later on in life they tend to be in more creative endeavors in their life and actually start to show more that they bring that into their workplace, and they report that they use creativity and it's effective for them in the workplace. So as part of the Center for Childhood Creativities, we think that's valuable moving forward. And I think this is kind of getting ahead to your next question a little bit. So actually, I'll wait.
No. It's okay.
So what we do at the center is we see that value. And in the last few years, there's been surveys of CEOs of these Fortune 500 companies asking, what is it you're looking for employees? What are you looking for in executives? And the number one criteria that CEOs are looking for in their business is creativity. Okay, what is that? In many ways, the Torrance test was built. Here's a really cool little fact for you: is the Torrance test was not built to see how smart kids were necessarily. It was initially built for the military. So Torrance was asked to come in and say, we have people in planes going, they're getting shot down, we need to figure out how to survive. The problem is most of the time, they have to figure out a way to survive when they don't have the tools that they want. And if you think of a metaphor in life, a lot of times you get stuck not having the tools that you need. Maybe you don't have access to the Atlassian app that you need at that point. So you need to have this ability to be creative to survive, and a lot of times life is this survival thing. So Torrance thought, we need to teach people how to be creative, not knowing what they have available to them. What it also does, and I think what Mark was getting at, is many times children don't know what it is that they're creative at. And if maybe they don't have exposure to these art classes, these enrichment classes, that we never find out what they're good at, and that people are getting slipped through the cracks. Torrance test tries to capture these individuals. It's a major indicator for inserting children into gifted programs, but later in life, we think if you provide this value, the center thinks if you provide this value on creativity, that it's not something that you condone and or reprimand and say, don't be creative, that's too weird. We're actually like, thank you, thanks for being creative. We want to help you find what it is that you do, so that when you go to work for Atlassian after you're 24 and graduate, that this is not a problem, that you're not being negative. It's actually, you see the value in it from a very young age.
Yeah. And I'm just wondering, can you talk a little bit, because just in conversations I've had with you, you've talked about how with the way the education system is set up right now, there's actually something called a fourth grade slump, where creativity starts to go away. And so all of a sudden you had these kids that were really creative. They grew up, but they're about to go into the workforce, but they've lost a lot of this natural skills they already have.
Yeah. So one of the things that we really try to focus on is creating the value and seeing that there's value to creativity. But we also try to, we're doing research, and our white paper talks about this, is being flexible, coming up with original ideas, being imaginative, being weird is a good thing, okay? Fourth grade slump, some of the theories say that around that age, around fourth grade, is when you are becoming more aware of what your peers think of you. Okay, you're starting to say, okay, I want to be cool, I don't want to be weird. I'll get isolated real quick. I'm going to be the guy known for having his zipper undone for the rest of my life. So what some of the efforts for the white paper and the center in general is that we want to encourage that. We consult with Disney and some other big businesses, but also schools in the Bay Area, to say, let's encourage this weird so that children don't feel that they can be more resilient when somebody says, oh, that's so weird, Tony. Why? I can't believe you brought up that solution, okay? So we try to give them more resilience, more grit, and say, here's what we put into our educational programs, but also to inform people that long term, this makes you more immune to that social pressure and being even more awkward as a teenager.
And then I think to Paul and Mark, because I think you guys are working with a lot of people who don't know that they're creative. What's some of your experience with that in terms of like pulling them into this process and what happens?
Well, I definitely think selfishly through the improv workshops, I was sort of looking for creative people across the company, because when we want to solve problems, like you want to approach people that are comfortable with this style of collaboration, right? I mean, in divergent thinking, I feel anybody can do it, but not everyone's comfortable with it, because you're throwing out all these ideas, and some of them are kind of weird, you know? Like, well, sometimes the problems are weird too, but like last week when we first met about this panel, I was looking for a Lego head costume for a video we wanted to make, and we'd exhausted this list of ideas, and I walked in. We did the speedstorming actually as a practice, and I got 10 more ideas out of that I hadn't thought of before. Like, go print one, like I hadn't thought of that 3D printing, and that was amazing. So anyway, finding people that are really comfortable with divergent thinking is going to help you, kind of be around people and get to ideas faster, I think.
Well, but but I think my whole deal with this is that I think the way to find this is kind of create these fun settings. Like, as you were talking about the 4th grade slump, the only thing in my head was like, could there be anything more unfun than testing?
Yeah.
And like, it's just awful. Like, as a kid and as a grown-up, just the notion of testing is like, makes you just like, I'll do other parts to your body and things.
Choice.
But like, but that's like the most unfun thing. And to get to your point of like finding the untapped creativity, I really do believe trying to create these environments that are fun and relaxing will increase the odds of people feeling comfortable enough to share ideas and work with other people and trust other people with those ideas. And that's sort of the pattern I keep seeing over and over and over again.
And you get good at it.
And you get good at it, and you get confident at it, and you feel better about it because people celebrate some of your ideas. I mean, that's that thing that happens in 4th grade is really powerful, of like peer perception. But if you create this fun environment, I think there's an opportunity for that peer thing to actually help.
Yeah.
Celebrate your weird ideas,
Yeah.
which goes back to all your weird identities from long ago.
Yeah. Did you talk about how the process works a little bit? Like, because it's kind of neat and unique.
I could just outline it. Yeah, so basically the process for how it works is it's exactly what I said at the beginning of bringing this sort of writer's room and that sort of space. What we do is we work with clients and bring like 8 to 10 people from the clients. They tell us a problem they need to solve. And sometimes, we're from the marketing world, so it could be like, we need a video, or we need a brand positioning, or this or that. But we don't know where to start. And so what happens is what we do is instead of going off and telling them, oh, we solved your problem, we actually bring them in the room with 8 to 10 of these sketch and improv comedians for 2 hours. And we come up with a lot of ideas together, and they are definitely, I will be completely honest, they are fucking freaked out at the beginning because like these improv comedians, they come in and they're like, hey, what's going on? Hey, and they're very extroverted, and some of them aren't, but so then the client's like, oh my God. But then what happens is it is that tandem jumping thing I said, which is like the comedians sort of get things going, and they are very free. They've practiced not having that self-critic on.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people have practiced having it on all the time. And that's exhausting. And so what happens is like over the course of these 2 hours, not only do they loosen up, but they get closer to understanding what problems are being solved. They can solve them themselves, and they have this third party that, again, we're going through the lens of communications. The third party, these comedians are always like, I've seen it a zillion times. They will turn to, after things are warmed up and everyone's comfortable with each other, they will turn to a client and ask, can you just explain that one more time to me? And Mark's been in these sessions where the client, sometimes it's Mark, which has been funny, will then actually be really on the spot talking to a normal person. Not someone that works for them, not someone that like is within that industry, and they will be forced to explain it, but they're already been relaxed. This is coming in like hour number 2. And they'll explain it very simply. And it won't include the 10 bullet points that, they told me like, all of these are important. Every single one of these is important. But through this process, they get some clarity. They've sort of been stripped away of all the criticism, all of that, and they really can just take a moment to breathe and be like, that's the important thing. That's it. And then they build on that. And then they take that away.
Right.
And I think it's because they were relaxed and having a good time. I thoroughly believe that.
And what I love about the process is it can work for any problem. Like you don't have to solve a funny thing. Like you can approach any problem. One of the things I started noticing is like through comedy you find truth, and with truth you can solve your problem. And so like if you watch stand-up comedians, a lot of times I've been paying a lot of attention to this, like the jokes that they say. It's just like everyday observations of truths that we all encounter. And it's funny because we all know it, right? And
it's the Homer Simpson quote because it's funny because it's true.
Exactly. And anyway, I'm a huge believer in using funny to figure out what is your real problem and then solve it.
Yeah. So we're coming down to our last kind of 5 minutes. So I just wanted to open it up to the audience really quickly to see if anybody had questions. If so, just raise your hand. I don't think we have the app working for us right now. But let's go here and then we'll go over there.
Do you deal at all with Sean Akers' research on positive psychology and changing social scripts and that sort of thing? It sounds very similar.
Yeah, actually, I was just looking at some Sean Akers yesterday.
Okay, thank God.
Bring it up. Yeah.
I was like, Sean, I haven't talked to in a while.
I was watching Green Acres yesterday. I don't know about Sean Akers.
Yeah, so positive psychology is a big movement and what Sean, I think, is really touching at in the whole movement is most of the psychology is based on how do we identify what's abnormal about people, which is very negative, to go back to Mark a little bit. And the positive psychology is saying, okay, let's look at changing your script, changing how you normally identify the confidence and your ability to move into different roles. I don't know his work that great. It's funny that I just read his stuff yesterday. But yeah, there's a lot of research that's saying, okay, it's enough. Let's start building people up instead of tearing down and identifying what's wrong with them.
And then let's go over here.
Yeah, I was just curious about, you talked about building the resilience.
Yeah.
What tactics or strategies have you come up with?
Well, so the examples that they gave of just going through this process of like saying weird shit and making failing fast is a really big thing, even in the children's classrooms. So there's research on resilience, research on grit, that at some level you don't care what the evaluation is because you're willing to keep working at something. In the classroom, that's kind of cool because you're working on something, you're dealing with obstacles, you're dealing with failure and this and that, but sometimes creativity is letting go of what you thought the problem was before and now having to adapt to what you've learned through the process. Okay, so in the classroom, how do we do that? In our research, we generally try to say, let's try to bring more of this divergent thinking in there so that people know making mistakes has to be part of your learning process. Wrapped up in all of this, especially what Paul was saying, it's funny that it's true and all of that, creativity is learning. You have to make mistakes in order to learn. You don't know what you know. It becomes very obvious once you become aware of this truth that Mark was saying. And in fact, it's one of the criteria for the US Patent Office. If you want to get a patent, it has to be an original idea, it has to be useful, and it has to surprise you. So many times that it's funny because it's true is, holy shit, how did I not think of that before? And it becomes very obvious in this process through divergent thinking and through bringing that into the classroom, it becomes very valuable and obvious.
Before we go to that question, just one build as well of something you said that sparked in my mind is when you are trying to be creative about a certain problem, I would actually say go back to the exercise that we started here of like be creative about what the problem is before you try and solve it.
Yes.
Because a lot of times the problems that clients come to us with aren't the problems they're actually trying to solve. Like, so we spend a lot of time being creative about what is your real problem. And then we spend time being creative about how to solve that. Mm-hmm. So I would just say like, spend as much time being like, what's the right problem? Mm-hmm. And follow that back before you kind of get into the solving it. And yes?
I have a question. So when you're talking about, creating these fun activities and jokes and things, and so many companies are now globally distributed.
Mm-hmm.
So there are cultural contexts. For example, the Okie Pokey we did today would be totally like out of context of cultures that my background is from. So how do you design something that makes everybody happy and not offend anybody?
Wow.
I don't think you can. And that's okay. Sometimes being offended is part of the process. I'm going to say that out front. It's risk-taking all the time. And I'm guessing, and I'm going to let them speak, is they're going through and they're taking a risk every time they go and consult. They're putting themselves out there to figure it out. And you're offending people. And that's part of the resilience is you don't know how to offend somebody until you actually do. A lot of the time.
And I think the other thing, too, that I would say out of this process is I've learned that I'm surprised how much it takes to offend people. Like, I actually think once you get to this process, people are a little more relaxed. They are looking through a different lens. They have put their guard down, and they're like, someone said something that normally would be very politically charged, but in this context, it's sort of, again, it's taking that self-critic, that thing you're talking about. I mean, I understand there's probably some ways to do that and learn local things. But I think the whole point is you'd be surprised how more forgiving people are when they are in this context, going through this lens of taking the self-critic off. I think that's part of it.
And then I think through improv and like the improv games that you play, there are hundreds and hundreds of games, and a lot of them are just making silly sounds or throwing a fake ball around, and it's pretty hard to offend someone through these things. And you just search for the ones that would work in certain situations, because fun is fun for everybody. Standing up and moving and doing something silly is fun for everybody, and you can find exercises that work across cultures, I think.
Well, that's our time.
That's our time.
So we want to thank you guys very much for coming out.
Thank you.
I'm headed to the main stage to do Speechless Live, and I would love it if you all came to that, because now you guys know what funny is, and I'm going to be super nervous about it. So come support me. All right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you.
Sit down, dude.
Quick update for those walking out. We are going to break for lunch. There's going to be a talk in here called Tailoring Confluence during lunch.